Inflation is when you pay $15 for the $10 haircut you used to get for $5 when you had hair. Very wise words from Sam Evan. A very good afternoon to respected speaker, Mr. Abhijit Mukopadhyay, faculty members, and all my fellow mates. I are in
Abhijit. Abhishek.
Yes. A very good afternoon to respected speaker, Mr. Abhijit Mukopadhyay, sir, faculty members, and all my fellow mates. I are in Aurora on the behalf of Sim Street, the finance club of SCMS Nagpur, Semi Talk Club, the media cell of SCMS Nagpur. Welcome you all to this webinar. The topic of this webinar is global inflation outlook and its impact on the Indian economy. So first of all, I would like to thank Abhijit sir for taking out his precious time from his busy schedule for the students of SCMS Nagpur. Thank you, sir. So now I would like to introduce our respected speaker. Abhijit sir is the senior fellow with ORF's Economy and Growth Program. His main areas of research include macroeconomics and public policy, with core research areas in monetary economics and the political economy of finance. Abhijit sir has an extensive experience in economic and policy research, academia, business school, teaching, and academic administration. He is an alumni of Calcutta University, where he pursued BSc Honours in Economics, and also he pursued his Masters in Philosophy and Economics from Jawaharlal Nehru University. The key areas of interest of Sir are agriculture, development economics, government policy making, Indian economy, international trade and business, macroeconomics, micro and macro business environment, monetary economics, and political economy of finance and public finance. So now I would like to hand over the stage to Abhijit sir for the opening note. Thank you so much.
Yeah, all right. Because I have seen the set of questions that you have sent, and as well as your topic, of the day. So it's probably the most relevant topic in economics at this point of time. So global inflation is something that is bothering, I think, almost all major economies, all the countries. But if we talk about all the major economies, then inflation is prevalent in almost all of them. So there is no doubt about it. So of course, there is because I would say a few things which will not be in alignment with what you can see in the mainstream media, because most of the times you get to see in the TV channels or even in the social media, in different kind of YouTube channels and other kind of things, that India is doing very well or something like that. Yes, if you compare with some other, and then if you take the growth rate, for example, I am saying the inflation growth rate, if you take the GDP growth rate, if you take the in some of the times, if you look at the let's say manufacturing growth rate, probably it gives some amount of I would say kind of an assurance that our economy is doing well. But my point is very simple to start with. Let me begin with, because first of all, what I would like to say is that in today's globalized economy, where all economies, definitely all the major economies, I'm talking about OECD, the entire, let's say the G20, the group of 20 plus, if you include some of the emerging economies. I'm not talking about, not only talking about India, countries like India and, Brazil or China or something like that. There are other, a few African economies as well, which are doing well, which may emerge in near future. So, if this kind of a situation we are in, then if the entire world is doing badly for quite some time, then India cannot be insulated, because we are not decoupled. We are not self-sufficient. We are not an economy in typical textbook. Those of you, I assume that at least some of you here in the since the the announcement has been made in the name of Finance Club. So I assume that some of the some of the people present here will be having economics as their background. So in typical textbook, in trade textbook, we start with autarky, what we call autarky. Autarky means, in simple words, autarky means that you insulate yourself from outside. You don't do any kind of trade, practically speaking, and you are self-sufficient, but we are not. No country is no country can afford to be autarkic in today's times. So forget about other things, because we need oil, because your economy, we are still running on oil. All kinds of activities are running on oil and other kind of things. So obviously, if the, and I'm also not immediately getting into the financial market side of it. Financial markets are also absolutely linked all over the world now. Definitely India's financial markets are totally linked with other major markets, all in Japan, in US, even in UK and EU, all those countries, we are linked. We are in a globalized world, and since we are in a globalized world, so of course, after if this thing, if the inflation, global inflation keeps on growing, and what and of course there is a slowdown also, because now I'll just I'll just put some figures. Usually I when actually interacting like this, I am not very fond of dropping a lot of data. In any case, in today's times, anybody can sit in the internet and get the data. So that's not a big problem. But still, just to make my point stronger, I am just giving. In July, I think, most probably, if I can remember correctly, this was July IMF forecast. They said that from last year it was 6.1%, which was understandable, because the previous year was the pandemic year, rapid, not rapid, rather widespread lockdown actually happened everywhere. And from that, last year, of course, the world economy grew at 6.1%, which is huge. Given if some of you track the the world economy growth rate, then 6.1% is very, very huge, because it is. So it is. IMF said that it will slow down to 3.2% in 2022, and probably in next year, 2023. I'm talking about calendar year here. They all give figures in calendar years, unlike our major official data, which are in fiscal year from April to March. And so that is their idea. But I came across a KPMG, which is a little bit more latest, which they are saying that in 2023, the GDP growth, global GDP growth, can come down to even 1.9%, which I believe is very, very possible, very much plausible and possible kind of a situation where, in fact, it may slow down, and it will slow down, and that slowdown will also be helped by this prevalent situation of inflation. Because why? For the simple fact that whenever there is an inflation, it's a common kind of within the monetary policy circle particularly, it's a common kind of wisdom and common kind of consensus also. It's almost it's a consensus that whenever you have inflation, you cut down the interest rates. Basically, I am not getting into, because I am not a great believer in that theory. But anyway, I am not important, because those people who are fixing up the rates of interest, they are much more important at this point of time. All of them, without any exception, they believe that whenever you have a high kind of an inflation, then you just keep on increasing the rate of interest, for the simple reason that the logic behind it is that ultimately you cut down the money supply from the market. So once you cut down the money supply, then available money will go down, and once available money goes down, then price levels tend to cool off. That is the theory. Of course, there are a lot of critics of this, which once again, it does not come into the mainstream, but I am not going into that. But, if, in the following discussion, if anything comes on that line, then we can talk about it. But let us first assume that, that this theory holds. So if this theory holds, even if this theory does not hold, that is what is going to happen. The point is that all of them, starting from USA Federal Reserve to, European Central Bank, to, our country, everybody, even RBI, from 50 basis point, which means 0.5%, 0.5% increase in repo rate actually happened in the last MPC, or the Monetary Policy Committee meeting. So I'm really sorry. Just a minute.
Awesome.
I'm sorry. And then what I was trying to say is that ultimately, whenever the inflation goes up, which is the current situation, then rate of interest will go down. So if rate of interest goes down, then obviously, as a fallout, the cost of credit, rate of interest is also cost of credit. So cost of credit is also going up. So of course, that will have some impact on the investment, because people who have to invest money, usually, it is in any kind of industry or wherever you go, people actually borrow money from whatever. People borrow money from bank, from open market, from, other kind of, now we actually talk about startups also. They, take money from all kinds of, a different kind of capital. But anyway, let us not talk about startup is a different beast altogether. But let us say, the conventional, the producer, of any kind of goods. I'm not only talking about manufacturing, any kind of goods. Anybody who needs some kind of a credit has to pay the rate of interest as the cost of credit. So if you increase the rate of interest, then obviously there will be some negative repercussion on that also. So over a period of time, so what is going to happen is that your growth is also going to suffer, because you are combating inflation by increasing the rate of interest, in most of the countries. I think, I if I remember correctly, then probably Robert Solow, I think, once said, he actually said that inflation by, something like that. He said that combating inflation by increasing the rate of interest is like, burning down the house to roast the pig. Basically, you have to roast the pig, and then, you burn down your house, and then you roast the pig. It does not make much sense, because of course, in India, in fact, there is not only in India, there are other developing countries also. It will be unfair to say only India, but in a lot of other countries, including China, even I would say even including China, because unlike some of the developed countries, let's say, the G7 countries, these, our countries, or, some of the even, let's say BRICS countries, most of these BRICS countries, let us not talk about Russia right now. We have to come to Russia, but in another context. But the point I'm trying to make is that we have, affluent, wealthy, well-to-do sections, and since we are a big country with a big population, so obviously, out of that, how much is that? I think now people are saying 1.35 billion or something like that. Out of that, of course, definitely around 10, 15, maybe even 20% of the population will be comfortable even in these kind of times. So, but I am not talking about those top 15 or 20%. I am talking about the bottom, let's say 40% of the population. You have you have, pockets of vulnerable sections in this part of the demography. And, these people need to be protected simply because of the fact that inflation actually hurts the most. Of course, if I am if I am I'm just giving an example. If somebody is earning something like 2.5 lakh a month, which some of you will eventually will earn also. Many of you, not some of you, many of you will eventually earn. Then possibly that person, the kind of effect of bad effect of inflation which will happen on that person is nowhere near the bad effect on that person who is actually earning, let's say, I am not talking about even the the poor population. I'm talking about somebody who is making 15,000 per month, 15,000 or even 20,000. 20,000, if somebody is running a family of 5 or 7, with a combined income of 20-25,000 or even 30,000, they will get affected. Forget about the people who are below 5,000, per month kind of a thing, or those who do not have any kind of income. I am even not talking about them. So, they are, in any case, everybody, it's a commonsensical thing that they will get much more affected by, any kind of inflation. So, of course, these people, even I am saying, even top of that. So that is why very consciously I said 40%. That there is a good proportion of our population which will get affected. And what is the problem with that? The problem is that there are two different kind of what we call schools of thought. One school of thought which is pretty much entrenched in the entire market philosophy. They buy. I am not saying I am against market philosophy. Yes, there are certain places where actually markets have to operate, because otherwise you will not get the right kind of price, you will not get the right kind of mechanisms. That is fine. I'm fine with that. But not everywhere the market works very well, because that is also a textbook thing. You pick up a textbook, the first thing that you learn in a microeconomics, that is market failure, that how market actually fails. So these are the kind of situations where when market fails, then some kind of an intervention is needed. Of course, any individual industrialist or any individual agency will not be able to do that. So government has to do that ultimately. So that is, but the second point what I am trying to make is that among these vulnerable section, there is a, they are responsible for generating a huge kind of internal demand for a lot of consumption. So, once that consumption goes down, then your aggregate demand actually falls. And once your aggregate demand falls in the next time period, then what will happen is that your GDP will further fall. So that is going to happen. As I was trying to say, one school of thought will say that how does it matter? Because, if your top 20-25% rich people are buying things, yes, rich people are buying things, which is true, because, particularly in the last one year or so, 1.5 year or so, the economy is getting driven mostly by the demand created by this top 20-25%, or let's say even 30%. They are, that during pandemic, people were locked up into their homes and, doing all kinds of work from home, and people were, people like you, probably many of you were, doing online classes and other kind of things. So obviously there will be a pent up demand. So, that then people got out and then they started, traveling at new places. They started buying cars. They started buying, some of the luxury goods, what we call luxury goods also. But this cannot continue, because my simple point is that this cannot continue ad infinitum. So, that is not the way the economy operates. So then you need all those people who buy all those 5 rupee Parle G from the local shop, 5 rupee Parle G, and then they, drink probably a roadside cup of tea, and, with that Parle G, we need those people to have some money in their hand. Otherwise, the consumption demand is going to get affected. So, this is the broadly that kind of a situation that probably, since you said, to begin with, let me stop here. Now, let us, take up the questions also, because this is what the general feeling I have about that entire topic.
Yeah, so sir, if you don't mind, we'd like to ask you the couple of questions that we sent you already, like basically.
Yeah.
So, sir, the question that arises is how well is India positioned in the battle against inflation when it's compared to the emerging market peers? Like, for example, we take all the other South Asian economies. How well is India faring as compared to those when we come to combating inflation?
Here, in fact, saying a lot of things, let me share, because I just found out a map, which I will show, directly from that website itself. So, that's a better way of putting it. So, let me find out that. Yes. I'll just share my screen. I can share my screen, no?
Yes, sir. I believe you're authorized to share your screen.
And I disabled. Host disabled participant screen sharing. So
just a second, we'll take care of that, sir.
If you can give me permission to share my screen, I'll just show you a simple diagram which I found in World Economic Forum. This is actually a nice way of putting it. Can I? No, I can't. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Is it properly visible?
Yeah, sir. It's visible, properly visible.
Yeah, this. They have this was, I believe, it's some of you definitely must have come across Pew Research Center, because they do a lot of studies, database studies. They are and they claim that not only claim that, till now I found that claim to be true also. To broadly speaking, true. They don't take any sides. They just give the data. They just give the data, and they just give you the kind of reality that we are facing at this point of time. So that is what they always try to do. That's why I like them also, because I am also a believer in. First, I always look at data, because there is nothing, there will be a umpteen number of people who will be giving a lot of different kind of opinions here and there. But many a time, most of these opinions they don't have any fundamental, what we call the database kind of backing or empirical backing, kind of thing. This is something I think most probably, Pew Research Center did. Pew Research Center did it. This is like 37 of 38 member nations of OECD plus 7 other economically significant. Of course, that is why India is there. South Africa is there. China is there, and the entire. Oh, China is not there. Yeah, China is there. China is there, and then other out of OECD, countries are also there. So this is the situation we are in. So it is not that Turkey has this was the first quarter. This was the calendar year. This calendar year, first quarter inflation rate, average, of course, So we are in this one. 5.1% to 7.4%. So India is here, South Africa is here. So a huge in that entire North America, uh, mostly, they are also there, similar kind, somewhere 10% or something like that. But here, but look at this. Why I am showing this is once again because of the fact that ultimately it's not about combating or whatever. The point is that I kept on writing, from 2020, during from the lockdown also, because the simple point I try to make is that India. So you have a fair enough idea now that these are the countries, these are the economies which actually drive the global growth. This is probably all other, because what I am trying to say is that if you take the entire continent of Africa, then their combined GDP will be even less than, forget about USA or China, it will be even less than India's GDP. So these are the countries that is somehow driving the global growth. So that is the simple point I'm trying to make. Or India is not something that India is not in this kind of a shape or this kind of a shape. So India is also there, and I'll just stop sharing. Yeah. Now the point I'm trying to make is that our tolerance level, going by official, I am not giving here any kind of personal opinion that what should be to tolerant level of inflation or what should not be. The Reserve Bank of India itself says that the tolerance level is 6%. The upper limit of the tolerance level is somewhere around 6%, even for the time being. This is a debatable point. Of course, a lot of people, a lot of economists, they always keep on fighting. Economists also, we sometimes people jokingly say that if you bring in 10 economists, there will be 10 into 10, 100 different kind of opinions. So that is also true. It's a joke, but then, there is some amount of truth in that also, because even from inside, I can say that. But then I am not getting there. But what I am trying to say is that that ultimately we are above the tolerance level set by the central bank. That is the simple fact. And there was a time, I remember, very distinctly. There was a time, somewhere around 8-10 years back or something like that, when very conveniently wholesale price index used to be quoted. Why? Simply because of the fact that consumer price index used to be higher than the consumer price CPI growth used to be higher than the WPI growth. Now the situation has completely changed. So that the situation that, and another kind of another kind of conundrum, I would rather say, another kind of a riddle, but it's not that kind of a riddle also. But of course, WPI and CPI, wholesale price index and consumer price index, they don't move in tandem. There is certain amount of divergence. Not now. It has started happening almost 10, 15, 20 years back. From that point of time, we actually had divergence in consumer price index and wholesale price index. But it's a very convenient kind of thing. People, RBI keeps on, quoting CPI figures now, simply because of the fact that CPI figures is now lagging the WPI growth. But, if you look at WPI, and WPI has, all sorts of in that basket. Of course, if you ask me that how it is calculated, I don't know, because it's a very complex kind of. But we only look at the basket. What are the major commodity groups are there, and so the WPI is was at, I believe last when I checked, it was still in double digit. So first point that I would make here is that we are also not insulated from inflation. So we are in an inflationary situation. There is no point saying that somebody USA is having more inflation than India. So what? The USA's average consumption capacity, USA's average income, everything is multiplied. So why should I bother about that? So, that is the first point that I would like to say. Secondly, that when you talk about that entire question of, that emerging market peers or something like that, it's not a question of how you are combating inflation. Can you pull down inflation? I think that is not the right question to ask. The right question is that how long this inflationary situation will persist globally. And whatever we are facing in India, how much of that is generated from the domestic economy, and how much part of that is getting generated from outside? That we need to be very clear of, because only then we can understand the answer of this question. I am saying both, because there are sources of I would say some domestic sources, but this time domestic sources I'll come later, because there is a question on I think monsoon and other kind of things also. So there, in fact, in detail I'll talk about, but definitely I can very broadly say that food inflation actually happened here. Secondly, there is a huge tax burden which has been put on the fuel, particularly petrol and diesel, which has got huge inflationary impact, within your domestic economy. And then there are, of course, a lot of other different kind of supply side bottlenecks. Because, for example, what I am trying to say is that we, even our manufacturing, let us take example of automotive industry. Automotive industries, we are still pretty much, in spite of all rhetoric and on the all chest thumping in social media, we are hugely dependent on Chinese import, and Chinese import of all those kind of semiconductors and chips and other kind of things. That is why we are in a situation which was unthinkable even 5 years earlier. That now, if you want to buy, if you have the money, if you put the entire money, the cash down, to buy a car, then most of the popular cars, you will not get all those popular cars right away, off the shelf. You have to wait for at least 2-3 months. For some of the upper end SUVs, now you have to wait even more than a year. Why all these are happening? Because there is no semiconductor, there is no chip which are coming back from China. And that is what I was trying to say. In spite of all kinds of chest thumping and all kinds of political rhetoric and other kinds of things, what actually happened in the last 2 years is that our import from China actually has increased, in absolute amount, and even, if you look at the growth rate, it is growing stupendous. So that is the kind of situation we are in. So of course, we are in a situation where still, there are domestic part, once again, I'll come back, as I said, but the internationally, that the entire pandemic and the resultant, what I would say, the frequent lockdown and all kinds of restrictions that, you cannot operate this kind of factories. 2020 was pretty bad, pretty bad for everybody, and even in India also. So obviously, there were a lot of supply chain bottlenecks which are happening, and the major, there are a lot of, n number of factors can be mentioned, but I will just pick up major two. The first one is that China's dealing with COVID-19. I find it hugely problematic. Problematic means they are still now into that zone that, we are not going to let COVID-19 spread anywhere or something like that. Last when we checked, and when there was this rumor of Jinping, having a coup and dethroned or whatever, something like that, mostly done by all the right-wing, trolls in the social media and Twitter and other kind of things. That time even I was, I got also swayed by that, and then I was just, like many other people were doing, I was also, checking the, the airport flight getting cancelled, and then, coming, how many flights are, then I realized that, a lot of disruption are, even in the flight, as layman, we can find out. Then I found out from a journalist friend that these are all because of the COVID restrictions. Because of that entire COVID restrictions, it is like this for almost past few months. So if this is the kind of a situation, and China, whether we like it or not, China actually, even at this point of time, China is the main supplier as far as your benefit, as far as global manufacturing is concerned. China is the main supplier, and it is no more that even 15, 20 years back, what we used to jokingly say that all Chinese goods are all fake, all copied or something like. But China is not in that phase. China has graduated from that phase. China is now actually exporting all kinds of high-end, high-tech, all kinds of goods. So any disruption in China is going to affect any other economy, and it has actually also affected India pretty badly. I just gave you example of automotive sector, but I'm pretty much sure that once you look sector by sector, then of course there will be, because even in pharmaceutical, for example, what they call API, all those these things, the most of those actually come from China. So that is one of the major problems. One of the more recent problems. Apart from COVID, I am not even talking about COVID, because all of you are living through that. That we all are living through that that period, and we are seeing that what is happening in and around us, and all kinds of things. But apart from all those COVID restrictions, and then 2020, 2021 devastating, then 2021 was the Delta wave particularly was pretty bad. So I am not getting into all those, forget about all those. Even in today's times, when we thought that the global recovery is on the track, what happened? China started, whenever there is one small outbreak, they are closing down everything, and it is having effect everywhere. That is one major problem. And second problem is the Russia-Ukraine war. That is huge. Yes, one can always say that how much India import from Russia. That is true. We don't import much from Russia. Apart from our major relationship, economic relationship, or all any kind of bilateral relationship, let's say, is hinged on mainly all defense stuff. All kinds of if India has to buy some latest missile or something else, then when actually the USA, in spite of all the contrary kind of views posed in media, many a time the major producers of defense equipment and all kinds of arms, basically arms and ammunition and other kind of things, like USA, Germany and France, they refuse to sell to India, and when they refuse, you have to go to Russia. So that is the main bilateral. That is I believe the fundamental bedrock of India-Russia relationship at this point of time. A lot of talk, and particularly in today's WhatsApp times, you will get 1,000 different kind of WhatsApp, all fake messages, about Russian oil getting into India or something like that. But it is not to that extent, because there is, even now, I don't know what will happen in future, because when it happens, then we'll see. But at this point of time, our export is even less. We still, last I checked, we still have a deficit with Russia also. So of course, we export less. Whatever we import, that is also not very substantial. If we compare it to, forget about China, even if you compare it to, let's say, European Union, it is very small. The kind of export we do to European Union, the kind of import we do from European Union are much greater than what we do with Russia. The Russia figures are pretty much big, simply because of the fact that we buy a lot of all those defense stuff, basically. So, but that is not the point. The point what I am trying to make is that because of this war, and at one point of time, the Europe, just before this war, actually, before the war started, Europe is hugely dependent on all kinds of Russian fuel, energy, all Russian coal, Russian, pipe gas, Russian oil. So those things are getting, somehow creating havoc, because I don't know, these might be also a rumor, but then, this winter, a lot of places in Europe, and advanced Europe. I'm not talking about, Eastern Europe. I'm not talking about Poland. I'm not talking about Hungary or, these kind of countries, or Moldova. I am talking about Germany. I am talking about, even, the countries like even UK and all these places. They will have serious problem. They will have serious problem, and in dealing with, because winter time you need central heating and other kind of things. All those used to happen with mostly by Russian pipe gases, natural gases, but that has stopped for whatever reason. I'm not getting into that because that is not the topic. But then the point is that a lot of problems are happening there, and secondly there are second point is that there are other kind of repercussions also. What kind of repercussions? Because still it is now, it's very early. It is too early to comment. But in my belief, that is a distinct possibility, because a lot of manufacturing which are now situated in Europe, some of them apparently they are thinking of shifting their bases to USA, because they don't want to get into China. Of course, now we all know, for all practical purposes, we like it or not, or whether we take side or not, but then the US and China are at loggerheads, and it is going to happen, because one is at 23, 21, 22, 23 billion, trillion economy, and another is 14, 15 trillion. The highest, the largest two economies, they are going to fight among themselves, for all kinds of, not only economic, there are other geopolitical and other kinds of strategic and all kinds of I'm not getting there. But then the fact of the matter is that these two countries are going to fight among themselves, not as in war, but I am saying that, they are doing it since 2018, because one is putting in some kind of a tariff on, trade war was happening. It was, full-fledged trade war before that. Even now there are, a lot of things which are, they actively, both the countries are trying to, get the manufacturers out of the other one and, relocate them, or doing something politically. If you look at that, it is same. China is flexing muscle, and then United States is also doing something. In the entire Russia Ukraine war actually started because of that only. Now, if we look at that, then the point is that a lot of realignment is going to happen within the production structure. What we typically call in your language, the supply chain. Some of you will be specialist in all those supply chain logistics and other kind of things. When we talk about that supply chain is going to get in near future, in another 6 months, 1 year time. It is not even a very distant kind of a future also. Because that is going to happen. If this war goes on, then that is going to happen, because, if this war goes on, then sanctions will come in. Many countries, initially they were not abiding by all those, sanction rules and other kind of things. But now what is happening is that they have been pressurized. And now, they have to do full-fledged kind of sanctions. And there will be a lot of food in the food, because Russia had two major. Russia is the major supplier of two major goods. One is wheat, and then the second one is fertilizer. A huge amount of fertilizer which used to go to Europe, from Russia. So those things will stop. We don't know how these things will pan out. So of course, if these two, so that is why I am saying that first you have this entire China's COVID-19, dealing with COVID-19 policy, and second is the Russia-Ukraine war. These two are going to shape the entire economic global scenario, and particularly inflation also. And nobody is going to, and then yes, then one can always ask that since India does not have direct, but we import a lot of things from European Union. European Union is one of our major partners. USA is one of our major partners. If I, take out China for a minute, if I don't talk about China for a minute also, but even we get a lot of capital goods, lot of other kind of things from European Union, from Germany, from France, from UK, from USA, and of course also then if all these major economies are affected, what about East Asia? Because can you just give me a moment? This is the problem.
Yeah, sir, sure.
I am extremely sorry. This is the problem. This is one of the problems, from connecting from home. You have to keep getting disturbed. But anyway,
Yes, sir.
the point I was trying to make is that there will be, these are all linked. This is also linked simply because of the fact we are in a globalized world. Because even the East Asian countries from where actually we get a lot of things, countries like Indonesia, even Malaysia, South Korea, from Taiwan, we also get a lot of, different kind of things. So obviously, those are also going to get affected because, we are living in an era where we are talking about global supply chain. There is nothing called localized supply chain anymore, because everywhere, anywhere you go, it's a global supply chain. And if something happens in that chain, maybe immediately we will not get affected, but eventually we are going to get affected. So obviously, so these are the major problem is here. What I see the major problem here is that ultimately, you have little control over a lot of these international factors. What can you do? You can't do anything. For example, there was a question also. I don't know, since I have taken a long time. Let us talk about dollar also. Dollar is for whatever reason. There can be a separate discussion. 1 hour discussion on why dollar is getting strengthened. But if I don't get into that discussion, also the fact of the matter is dollar is getting strengthened. We can all see that. And once dollar gets strengthened, your import bill is going to go up. Whatever you import, you have to pay more. You have to pay more rupee. In rupee terms, you have to pay more. And that will, in effect, that means what? That is also one kind of inflation. Of course, if I import, if I am a manufacturer, I have to buy something from outside, which is a regular one kind of inputs, let's say, which I have to buy from outside, and then that part I have to pay dollar. Now I have to pay more. What I'll do? Eventually, I'll increase my prices. And once I increase my prices, I am also fueling the inflation further. So that is how things are. So it's not a very happy situation to be in. But what to do? This is where we are.
Yeah, sir, sure. So thank you, sir, for such a detailed answer. Now let's take it to the audience if they have any questions.
Yeah, please.
Afternoon, sir. Am I audible?
Sir, can you hear the audience?
I can hear, but there is a little bit of echo. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Even if I can understand, you just relay it.
Okay. So my question is that India and China has a bilateral trade of more than $100 billion, and China has an inflation of 2.3%. So do you think that will have an impact on India-China bilateral trade relations?
Bilateral trade.
Yeah.
What will be the impact on bilateral trade of what?
So he mentioned that India and China have a bilateral trade of more than $100 billion. So, China being facing an inflation of 2.3%, what potential impact can that have on the bilateral trade of India and China?
I don't think that is because, as you can see, because there is, the question you asked just before. See, here China is having a lower inflation simply because of the fact that they do a lot of direct price control. They have a command economy, even on paper. They put in it's a what we call a chimera, basically. It's a mixture of it's a weird kind of economy which is going on, but it's a fact, it is going on. So they do a lot of price control. So that is why their inflation is on much lower side, because it is 2.3% is nothing, because in today's times, and forget about today's times, even in normal time, if you have somewhere around 2%, this is my own opinion, because as I said that there is a how much inflation is tolerable, or how much inflation is good. There are people sometimes they talk about good inflation, bad inflation. Why? Simply because of the fact that a little bit of inflation is actually good for the economy. Why I am saying so? Because it is the other side of the coin. Because since we are in a very hyperinflation kind of a situation, so anybody can come and say that inflation should be 0%. But 0% inflation is not a very good phenomenon. Why? For the simple fact that of course, why inflation happens. Forget about the current situation. In a textbook kind of a situation, why inflation happens? Inflation happens simply because of the fact that there is a mismatch between the demand and supply. So, of course, and information plays a huge kind of a role. What I am trying to say is that suppose, you are my buyer and I am the manufacturer, and I am manufacturing something. And what I am doing at the end of the day, I don't have exact data that how much you are going to buy. I am just making a projection. I am just making an estimate. I know that, you are sitting there, there are 30 or maybe 100 people sitting over there. These are my potential 100 consumers. And these 100 consumers, they, in fact, they bought this much amount of this good, X, Y, Z, or whatever good I am producing. They, within that product, they bought this one in the last 1 year or something like that. Last quarter or last 1 year or something like that, and then I am making my production. Similarly, from your side, what is going to happen? Because you are so, but then it may not match. It may not match with whatever is my expectation. It may not match with your expectation as consumer, because consumers can come up and say that in the prevailing macroeconomic situation, I am not going to spend. I am going to save, and then suddenly there is a drop. There is a drop. So obviously, there is a mismatch. So once in the market, I am supplying more goods by simple rule. It does not happen in that simplistic way always, but I am just giving you an example. So if I supply more into the market, then of course, the price is going to fall, and vice versa. And suddenly, I don't know, because, I have made fewer goods. I have made, and then by, jolted by that fact, in the next time period, next year, what I do, I actually produce less. And then all of you started demanding more. Then what is going to happen? Then the inflation is, the prices are going to rise. The point I am trying to make here is that due to, that what we call, it's a in microeconomics, we always make this assumption that there is free flow of information across, within the producers, within the consumers, from producer to consumer, from consumer to producer, but it never happens. In real life, it never happens like that. Since it does not happen like that, because of that information, there are, a number of other reasons also, but I am just picking up this example simply just to show you that ultimately some amount of mismatch is going to happen if the economy is producing more, economy is buying more. Basically,
Yes,
what I'm trying to say is that an active economy where you have active consumers, you have active producers, the matching of expectations from both the sides may not be the same.
Yeah, sir,
Or-
definitely.
And so there will always be some amount of inflation on the margin. And that is good. I would rather say that, if, and zero inflation or, even deflation is very dangerous, in my own opinion. That means your economy is not doing much.
Yes,
Your
sir.
economy is contracting.
Yes, sir.
So if your economy is growing, if your economy is active, there are activities in your economy, then of course, in that sense, definitely some amount of inflation. And going by that logic, China is having this inflation is not a problem at all. So why should China stop exporting at this kind of this
Yeah,
thing? And
sir, definitely.
from Indian side, it does not make any sense because China's inflation is less. The same
Yes,
good
sir.
if you want to get it from Philippines or Malaysia, then of course you have to pay more.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So answering the questions on what is one of the most relevant topics in the financial world. Now I'd like to call upon the honorable faculty in charge of the Simbi Talk Club, Dr. Subhajit Pahadi, to deliver the thank you note.
Okay, I think I'm audible.
Yeah, sir. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
audible.
hello everyone. Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Afternoon.
Hi.
Wonderful session from your end. And it's a formality. Let me just formally, convey vote of thanks to you and all the participants and all the members, those who were active, from the starting to the ending of this particular session. So it's really been an honor to be a part of this wonderful session. On behalf of SCMS Nagpur, I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the esteemed guest, Mr. Abhijit Mukopadhyay, Senior Fellow, Observer Research Foundation. Thank you for taking out time from your busy schedule and discuss on the topic global inflation outlook and its impact on Indian economy. And from the session, we definitely got to know different dimensions of inflation, which is very important for you to know as a management student even. And sir, hoping to host you soon at the Symbiosis Nagpur campus in offline mode.
I'll of course, let us see.
Yeah, definitely. We look forward then that too. And once again, sincere thanks to all the club heads of Symbiosis Finance Club and Symbitalk Club who have handled the event throughout. And a wide round of applause and thanks to all the members of Symbitalk Club and Finance Clubs who have made the event memorable one. And finally, thanks to all the participants, thanks to all the audiences to make this session a success. Thank you, all of you. Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, so I'd like to thank you, Abhijit Mukopadhyay, sir, to deliver such an insightful and detail-oriented session on what is probably one of the most relevant topics in the financial world right now. And on behalf of the Simbi Talk Club, the media cell of SCMS Nagpur, and the SM Street, the finance club of SCMS Nagpur, we'd like to thank you, and we can probably end the session now.
Yeah, it has been a pleasure because let me say, finish by saying that it has been a pleasure, and I can see a good number of audience also, because I want to thank them. In today's times, anybody who is speaking for an hour, on a boring subject like economics, and people are listening intently to that. Actually, I thank all of them, to be here and be a part of this entire conversation. And I probably next time I would like to, if I find opportunity, I'll take more questions from the audience. I should have done that, in spite of, instead of, speaking more, and rather I should have taken more questions. But anyway, doesn't matter. Next time, if it is possible, you have to make a 1.5 hour of that kind of a session or something.
Definitely, sir. Definitely.
Yeah, sir. Sure, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks.